Why didn't you say something?
I came back from Paris early to put together my lookbook, and if they like what they see, it could be the beginning of an entire lifestyle collection.
Because more people should be like you, Mother.
But before you tuck into that, you might find a low-fat yogurt more appealing.
I lost 2 pounds when you were away.
And you look marvelous.
Wow.
So in my previous video, I inserted a clip that showed Blair having a binge eating episode, and I stated that a forgotten subplot in Gossip Girl was that Blair Waldorf was bulimic. So in this clip I just showed you, we see the influence Eleanor has on Blair's eating behavior. I have always wanted to psychoanalyze Blair's relationship with her mother, as it seems to be a peculiar mother-daughter relationship. I believe that Eleanor was the reason behind Blair's disordered eating and behind Blair's unhealthy relationships with other girls, but that's a video for another day. Now, you may ask yourself, what does Blair's mother have to do with her ED? But many studies have found a link between mother-daughter relationship and EDs. So I have reviewed studies to back up my theory, and according to an integrative review exploring the influence of mothers on the development of their daughter's ED, it was found that the type of influence exercised by the mother depends on her personality profile, the mother's eating behaviors and body attitudes, and the bond between mother and daughter, and the type of communication that is established between the two. So first, let's start with Eleanor Waldorf. Who is she and what is her personality like? So Eleanor in the show was the founder of Waldorf Design, and she was essentially a renowned fashion designer who had built an empire. So she built her identity around achievement, aesthetics, and public image. Eleanor was cold, she was tactless, sarcastic, career-driven, and very much preoccupied with the reputation of the family name. I would say that her identity is overall organized around excellence, performance, perfectionism, and image. Regarding her eating behavior and body attitudes, the show never zeroed in on them, but through her controlling behavior toward Blair's eating, one can assume that Eleanor had an unhealthy relationship with food herself and body image as well. So it is not uncommon for those who work in the fashion industry to correlate food and eating behavior to image management, status signaling, and professional viability. So we have seen in the earlier clip how Eleanor was quick to stop Blair from eating pastry and suggested that she ate Greek yogurt instead. So that scene was very intriguing to me because we have seen Blair replicate this same behavior with her minions in the show, where she would take pastry off of their plates and it was like a reflex or a habit she has learned from her mother. The mother-daughter relationship Blair and Eleanor had was very unhealthy and unconventional. It almost felt like Blair was an extension of her mother, and she was expected to meet standards that forced her to abuse herself in some ways, such as developing bulimia or purging to remain skinny. So it's safe to say that Eleanor probably micromanaged Blair instead of nurturing her, and probably made her feel like love and affection were only available when Blair looked or acted a certain way. So I think that is why Blair turned out to be high-achieving, anxiously preoccupied with her weight, her relationships, her image, and her performance. Now, regarding their mother-daughter bond, it wasn't a tender or a nurturing one, as Eleanor was quite emotionally distant and she spoke to everyone in this condescending tone, including Blair. And she was depicted as the kind of mother who wasn't attuned to her daughter's emotional needs, and she only expected one thing from Blair, and it was excellence. So the problem is that her love as a mother was conditional on performance. She was very demanding, invalidating, evaluative, and only emotionally available when Blair was facing significant distress. So the psychology behind this is that Blair understood and internalized her feelings as inconvenient, her mistakes and failures as much more shameful than they should be, and a fear of abandonment or neglect when she displays vulnerability. So for any child, when comfort and care isn't really available, they end up finding other ways to self-regulate or self-soothe. So Blair's nervous system was essentially conditioned on threat, and she learned to regulate her emotions and overall nervous system through maladaptive coping strategies. So this brings us to Blair's ED or bulimia, which she probably developed because she was never taught adaptive ways of dealing with her emotions. She was taught emotional suppression because her mom herself was emotionally suppressed and very invalidating. Eleanor didn't set the stage for Blair to learn emotional regulation skills or even emotional intelligence. In many instances in the show, we have witnessed Blair act in very impulsive and reactive ways, such as rushing into revenge plans, retaliating without a second thought, and doing things she often ended up regretting shortly. So those same behavioral patterns are correlated to her disordered eating behavior, as the underlying cause of both is emotion regulation difficulties. So it is important to note that eating disorders can be representative of displaced rage or unexpressed emotions. And in Blair's case, I believe that growing up with a mother like Eleanor made her direct her anger inward, because directing it towards Eleanor may have been too threatening, as Eleanor, her mother, was the same person she wanted approval from. So through an attachment theory lens, Eleanor was Blair's primary attachment figure, and as a child, she probably had no choice but to suppress her emotions and seek control and regulation through other ways. So for instance, the anger that Blair might have felt toward her mom's emotional neglect may have turned into excessive self-control and cutting herself from her own emotions. And the shame she felt for being inadequate, for instance, may have been turned into purging, and the fear of being mediocre may have turned into perfectionism. There are many empirical studies that prove the link between emotion regulation or self-soothing problems and disordered eating. So if you were wondering what is the relationship between Blair's bulimia and her mother, well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for next videos.